Ladies and gentlemen, hello, bonjour, and may I start by saying how honoured I am to be with you all today. And today I will focus on trust and why trust is such a precious asset, an asset we take for granted, the value of which is often misunderstood or worse, ignored, and an asset that in the age of exponential change is the glue to and key ingredient for long-term sustainable success. Let me start by introducing myself and explaining my own personal trust journey. I am Charles Bowman, a recently retired PwC partner, a firm I've worked with for 38 years. I also carry the snappy title of a past Lord Mayor, which denotes the fact that from November 17 to 18, I served as the 690th Lord Mayor of the City of London. Those of you who've seen the pantomime Dick Whittington or visited the annual Lord Mayor show will know that this meant that I did spend part of my mayoral year travelling in a gold coach, carrying a tricorn hat, dressed in velvet robes and jabots, and wearing pairs of 60 denier tights. But as Lord Mayor, the principal representative of the City of London, the square mile at the heart of the capital where London began, I spent the majority of my time acting as a key spokesperson and ambassador for the business of the city and the UK's financial and professional services sector, a sector that employs 2.3 million people across the UK, accounts for more than 10% of the national GDP, and returns each year from financial services alone £76 billion in tax. That is 50% of the UK's national healthcare budget in a normal year, a sector that is a national and a global jewel. And looking at the role of the Lord Mayor, it is that juxtaposition between the old and the new, the guardian of both an historic and a modern purpose, which, when set alongside its political independence, makes it both unique and trusted the world over. In my first week in office, I found myself in the hall of Mansion House, the Lord Mayor's glorious Palladian home, set in the heart of the City of London, wearing the historic and extremely valuable badge of office, ready to travel to a meeting happening 1 or 2 streets away, only to find the official car and its driver, Leon, waiting to drive me. As a person who likes to exercise, I asked Leon if I might walk to the appointment. And Leon looked me in the eye and replied, "Lord Mayor, you are perfectly at liberty to walk, sir. The badge, however, will be taking the car," thereby demonstrating that ancient and historic chains and badges of office are irreplaceable, individual Lord Mayors not quite so much. And I tell this story as it reinforces to me the importance of the institution over the individual, an institution that has been a trusted constant for 835 years. I also tell you this story because throughout my year in office, I made the business of trust a key focus, with its objective of developing a legacy of better business trusted by society. Why trust? Well, the global financial crisis of 2008 had been the catalytic moment, marking the beginning of a seismic shift in the relationship between business and society. And despite new regulation and improved business practice, 10 years on, trust in financial services remained at an all-time low. The Alderman Trust Barometer reported in 2018 the single largest decline in trust in the institutions of business, government, media and NGOs. Just 43% of people in the UK trusted business, and nearly 7 in 10 respondents said that building trust was the #1 job for CEOs, ahead of delivering high-quality products and services. So, what did we do? Well, first, we carried out 2 streams of research. We convened a trust advisory group to focus on the business side of this trust issue and challenged the group to review the many pages of existing business guidelines, standards, and codes of conduct with the aim of distilling these often little red documents into some simple guiding principles to help build trustworthiness. Simultaneously, We held a series of day-long citizens' juries in cities across the UK, drawing people from off the street so as to understand better society's view of the state of trust in financial services. And we were shocked by the emotion behind the response. There was a lot of anger and bitterness. But once that had subsided, we tasked these groups to focus on the behaviours they felt were required from business to demonstrate and rebuild trust. We brought the findings from both the Trust Advisory Group and the citizens' juries together and found, to our surprise, that the recommendations from both, barring the language used, reconciled almost exactly, giving us the confidence to distill this research into 5 simple principles for improving public trust. The civic principles. Competence. In short, business must do what they do well. Integrity. Business must do the right thing. Value to society. Business must have a wider purpose. Interests of others. Business must focus on the customer and other stakeholders. And clear communication. Business must communicate clearly and transparently. And it was these principles that formed the foundations of the programme, and during the year we relentlessly championed them and the business of trust across the UK and beyond. We created the Leaders of Tomorrow Network, a nationwide community of next-generation leaders from across financial services, empowering them to take the agenda forward with their firms and the sector. We developed a longer-term network, working with school children, developing a trust resource for their schools and beyond. We also took the business of trust abroad. On each of my international visits, some 110 days, visiting 30 different countries. And given the strength of support, we began an interview programme of high-profile personalities, including Nicola Sturgeon, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Mark Carney, and for rugby fans amongst us, All Black legend Sir John Kirwan. It may be no surprise, given public perception, that most politicians spoke cogently of the importance of integrity. Mark Carney referenced the important role business should play in wider society in tackling climate change. And Sir John Kirwan, a first in his sport to speak up on mental health, recognised trust as the cornerstone of all relationships and a critical foundation for strong mental health. And finally, given the interest, we developed a survey for the public to complete, which reached business leaders, regulators, government officials, university students and school children across the world, everyone from the classroom to the boardroom. Well, that was a little while ago. Where does trust stand today? Why is it so relevant? And what should we expect looking forward? At the time of the global financial crisis in 2008, trust was very much a financial services issue. In the years since, trust has grown into a global problem, manifest across the world, whether in the UK referendums and general election results, in the USA, Catalonia, France, Hong Kong, and rising population worldwide. Most recently, well, after a year of unprecedented turbulence, the COVID-19 pandemic, with its associated economic consequences, the related uncertainty, a global outcry over systemic racism, increased polarisation, and overall political instability, the 2021 Alderman Trust Barometer revealed, and I quote, an epidemic of misinformation and widespread mistrust of societal institutions and leaders around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic, with more than 2 million lives lost and joblessness equivalent to the Great Depression, has accelerated the erosion of trust. Alderman continued by saying that adding to this is a failing trust ecosystem, unable to confront the rampant infodemic, leaving the 4 institutions of business, government, NGOs and media in an environment of information bankruptcy and with a mandate to rebuild trust and chart a new path forward. The examples are everywhere and at the centre of our news every day, whether it's vaccine efficacy, vaccine demand and vaccine supply chains critical to our safe passage out of this pandemic, or the growing tensions between West and East, or the implementation and application of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement and the related relationships beyond, the success of all these issues is dependent, in large part, upon trust. So what are we to learn and what can we do? Well, let me start with 3 observations. Firstly, there exists an intergenerational difference between the values and principles that underpin public trust today. Our Business of Trust survey asked people to prioritise the 5 civic principles, and the results were clear. Those over 30 years old voted overwhelmingly for integrity, and those under 30 voted overwhelmingly for value to society. And these differences are beginning to manifest themselves in changing expectations of business, its purpose, and its practice. Secondly, technology is part of the problem and must form part of the solution. The digital revolution has changed the frame of reference, and keeping abreast of technological developments will be critical to earning trust in this new age. 30 years ago, a teenager growing up in the small, rural East Anglian village where I live, 2 hours north of London, would have built their knowledge base from conversations around the kitchen table, on the school bus, in the village shop, from their teachers, grandparents, and perhaps a bit from the newspaper, TV, and radio. Today, that same teenager needs only a mobile and Wi-Fi, and with these can access any amount of information. And worse, or better still, share their views across the world at the press of a button. And that same teenager will build his or her trust in the outside world through new methods, including crowdsourcing and the number of likes on social media, something my generation find hard to understand. Technology does not have to be something to undermine trust. Instead, it should facilitate trust. As one wise fintech CEO reflected, this 4th revolution is a revolution of 2 parts, a technology-based revolution and a values-driven revolution. And thirdly, success is about the long-term winning over the short-term. And we should not forget that trust arrives on foot and leaves on a galloping horse. The coffee company that was perceived to have failed to pay its fair share of tax paid dearly and quickly when its customers voted with its feet and left the competition. And what next, and what recommendations? Again, 3 thoughts from me. Firstly, purpose, and a specific recommendation for business. Have a clear purpose beyond solely profit maximization, and communicate that purpose with clarity and authenticity. My own 2 daughters, both at university, would rather spend their money buying from businesses with purpose. And every day we see best-in-class young talent being attracted to those companies and organizations which, by way of example, actively promote climate action as part of their wider social purpose. Secondly, leadership. Business and all organizations should recognize that hierarchies and leadership models are changing. The playing field is getting flatter. Therefore, empower leaders at all levels, particularly the next generation of leaders. And support leaders through education. The agenda of trust should be discussed openly and honestly, and as early as possible. Indeed, I would encourage schools to consider including it within their curriculum. And thirdly, communications. Clear, balanced, and transparent communications must play a role to help slow the tide of misinformation and help develop trustworthiness in this increasingly polarized world. Again, those businesses that communicate with authenticity, putting their hands up when they get it wrong, are most likely to build trustworthiness with their stakeholders. And as a final word of encouragement to us all today, take personal responsibility. It is through practical and individual action that trustworthiness is built. And it should be the responsibility of each of us as members of society to play our part in creating a trustworthy environment. One inspirational mentor gave me a very helpful piece of advice concerning personal responsibility. Charles, he said, whenever possible, use the pronoun we or I instead of they. We are living through extraordinary change, grappling with the issues of climate change, exponential population growth, scarcity of resource, inequality, digital transformation, and very much more, whilst at the same time coping with the consequences of this global pandemic. A key foundation to our successful navigation through this age of change will be trust. It is trust that underpins collective responsibility, trust that is the cornerstone of all relationships, and it is trust that acts as the glue for the components that deliver long-term sustainable success. And whilst none of us have all the answers, it will be those people, businesses and institutions that put trust at the core of their DNA that will most likely thrive and survive through this age of change. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a huge honour to attend today, and as a token of my thanks and appreciation, I do have a small gift for the organising team. It is the same gift that I gave throughout my mayoral year to visiting dignitaries and to those who kindly hosted me on my travels abroad, and it is a pepper pot, un moulin à poivre. Symbolic, as I explained to all, because in times past, trust was often assured in English contracts through the exchange of a peppercorn. And it gives me great pleasure to think that many of my mayoral guests and hosts, the finance minister in Peru, the Finnish ambassador, a president or two of African nations, and the head of financial services regulation in Japan, to name a few, might, in enjoying their daily breakfast, be reminded of the importance of the business of trust. And I can think of no better symbol of my thanks to the whole of the TEDxPlaceMuseux organising team for coordinating this conference and for inviting me to be part of it today. Merci. Thank you.